I'm Kristine, aka Krisanthemum, and welcome to the Creative Chaos. I've decided last year that I finally wanted to create my very first video game, and this is, I'm gonna call it my first official devlog of Lumber, which is going to be a first-person horror game where you play as a lumberjack turned supernatural hunter protecting our state and national parks from evil tree monsters. I say it's my first in parentheses because I did do a couple last year. I was trying to challenge myself to create a video game in 100 days last year. It was kind of just a way for me to jumpstart myself and push myself and see how much I could really accomplish in 100 days. I knew I wasn't going to be able to create the whole game in 100 days, and about I think 30 days into it, I got bit by a dog and I broke my right thumb, and it was this whole mess, and the whole thing just went up in flames. This year, in 2026, my new challenge to myself is to just create a video game. There's no time limit, and my goal is to create as many of the assets as I can from scratch, especially early on while I'm learning to code in the background. So coding is something that I have a small amount of education in, and it's something I want to get better at. So I'm working to teach myself coding and at the same time work on assets for my game, because as an artist, it's really important to me that everything is made by me as much as possible. So without further ado, let's jump into devlog number 1 for Lumber. And this is gonna have some footage and stuff that covers all the way back from January through March. Today itself is March 30th. So there's gonna be a wide range of footage in here, and I'm hoping to start posting maybe like every other week for devlog specific videos, and then the in-between weeks will be art updates for other projects that I'm working on. So if that interests you, make sure that you hit subscribe and come along. I look crazy today. It's 8:34 in the morning. I made my coffee like an hour and a half ago. Almost all the ice is like half melted. We're still drinking it though. I'm having really bad eczema flare-ups, and I'm just being lazy today. I have 1,000,001 things to do on the computer, so I'm not worried about presenting myself pretty. I just needed to do a voiceover, and I also like wanted to work on stuff. I'm actually gonna move the camera. Oh, something's in my sock. Ah! Let me open the recent file. I don't even know if you can like really even see this on the computer. Kind of. Yeah. Sorry I'm squinty. It's like really bright. I'll stay here. Oop. But I have been working on some modeling for Lumber. I hate how my hair looks. I'm going to freak out. I mean, look, I'm having a day. We're having a time. I have been slowly figuring out Blender and working on modeling some different trees and assets. Something that is really important to me is that as I create this game, I want to make as many of the assets from scratch as I can. Not because I have an issue with asset flipping, but because I genuinely like 3D modeling and 3D texturing, and it's something I want to get better at, and it's something that I, as an artist, really enjoy. So the original plan with everything at the beginning of this year was I was going to really start deep diving into learning coding, and while I was teaching myself coding, I was going to work on 3D modeling. There has been a small hiccup in that, which is just that I have not been coding very much. I was doing really good for about a month and a half, and then I kind of let drop off at the end of February and now into March. So that is something that I need to get back into in my schedule. But I have been enjoying modeling, and I am to the point where today I am going to purchase the extended Adobe subscription to get access to all of the Substance Painter and Substance Designer programs. to start that model or start that texturing process for the models. So I have a redwood tree model that I've been working on. It is the first of, I'm hoping to do 10 different specific redwood trees that can then be scaled up and down to really give us like a wide range of tree assets for the forest. So the one I decided to start with is probably arguably one of the hardest that I should have done, but redwoods do this cool thing a lot of times where if two small ones are close together, they'll grow together and they turn into this giant double trunk. So I really wanted to do that because it felt like a unique asset to have in a forest game. A lot of horror forest games that I've seen are just generic forests and generic like just pine trees and such, and it's really important to me as I start working on these level designs and environments that I really want to have the correct native flora and like fauna in those environments. So that's going down to modeling and creating underbrush that you would actually find in that forest, and also like making sure that the ambient forest noises are accurate to that area. So bird calls that you would hear in that region, but also specific bird calls for the time of day. So if it's like into the evening or it's dark, like you're gonna hear different birds than you would if it was in the middle of the day. So that is something that I'm really excited to work on. And I have, like, I'm so far away from doing bird call stuff and like all of that, but I'm blanking on the name of the game. If I will look it up and I will add the name here because I can't remember what it's called. But I follow this game dev team. I think it's a team, a small team. But I've been following the progress of this game that's a bird watching game. And you go around and it's a multiplayer, like go bird hunting with your friends. And they wanted to have really specific bird calls for the birds to make sure that they were accurate. But obviously it's pretty difficult to go and get isolated bird sound like recordings without a lot of work. So what they did was they looked up already recorded calls from the birds, slowed them down, and I think they played them also in reverse and slowed it down so that it just sounded like weird noises. And then they recorded themselves at that like slower, like they recorded themselves making those sounds and then sped it up and played it backwards so that it would sound like the bird call. So when the time comes for me to get bird calls going, I really want to experiment and play with that rendition of using like to create the sounds. And I'm probably gonna hit up a bunch of my friends and have them also record them so that I get different versions of the same bird calls. That's kind of my little update on what's going on. I did start modeling a bar for the game. Part of what I want to have is like a limbo spot. It'll be where you can get money and upgrades for like your weapons and your person and like stuff like that is going to be a bar. So in between levels, you'll have the opportunity to visit the bar, and there's going to be like some things there that don't actually have any use to gameplay outside of like collectibles. And then I would love to have either a poker game or maybe pool or like a dart mini game that you can play to earn money, because the entire like inspiration of lumber is the idea of like supernatural, like the TV show, and hunters, and the fact that it's like your options are limited for making money. You're basically got to go hustle, but you're doing the job because it's the right thing to do, not because it makes you money. I am working slowly but surely on modeling kind of like a vibe for that. My goal is, I think I want to try and model like one asset for the bar a week. So starting next week, because this week is basically over and I want to work on the trees and stuff this week. So the idea, like my husband, I was asking him like, oh, should I make a dartboard or a lamp next? And he ignored all of that and said I should make a bowl of peanuts. So so he asked for a bowl of peanuts. So this is my really rough bowl of peanuts, and there's no like texturing outside of, I just made a really basic glass in blender, and then I made the peanuts brown. But they need like actual texture and stuff. So, bowl of peanuts. Yeah. So, and then I need to get back to coding. So today I'm going to do a little recording and work on the bark texture. I want to experiment with hand painting some more of it. And hopefully today, before I go and buy, I'm going to need Substance Painter for all the texturing for the bar for sure. But for the environments, the grass, the dirt, the tree bark, I really want to try just painting it in Photoshop. I'm looking at reference photos of redwood bark as I draw this. And one of the things that I currently have set up in Blender for the texture is like no shine. It's very flat. And that's just so that I can see what this is looking like. But as I add displacement and depth to this texture that I'm drawing, I am looking at the references, and the most, for lack of a better term, vertical, like if the bark is like this and like each finger is like a layer of bark, right? There's like chunks of bark. It's got a lot of grooves in it. And the bits that are high up actually have like some sheen to it. And then it's darker and less shiny as you go in. And I've actually like witnessed this with redwood bark when I've seen it in person, is that it has this almost, I don't want to say oily, it's not oily, iridescent, this almost iridescent quality to it on those top layers, or like when you peel it off, that underside. So there definitely is some shine that will like be needed to be added in at some point in this texturing process. So I'm excited to play with that. It's gonna be like really finicky. I can already like feel it's gonna be like a lot of experimentation of playing with different values and numbers until we get to a look that we like, that like feels good. I say we, me. And I have no clue how this audio is gonna turn out because I don't have my microphone on because I wasn't planning on talking to the camera. This is more just gonna be B-roll, which, speaking of B-roll, I should probably stop this and change angles again. So I'm not gonna lie, when I modeled this tree, I got really lazy on the UV map, and I was okay with that because I was okay with it because the top half of the tree, I didn't care if it was all janky and if the textures got messed up, because when you're in the game, the scale of the tree is going to be so large, like you're not going to be really able to see the top of the tree. And then by the time you add like the leaves and everything, it's going to be pretty well hidden. So I mostly just want to make sure that the base of the tree looked good and that the like heart of the pattern looked good, because the other side of it was if it got a little artifact or a little janky, it would add to that kind of almost painterly hand style. But as you can see here, it got swirly because my UV map was too messed up. So I did have to go through and like refigure that out, which to be fair to myself, I'm still absolutely confused and baffled by the UV mapping within Blender. Because tell me why it doesn't matter how many times I merge vertices together. If I then click off it and click back, they don't like stay stuck together. It just clumps them into one location, but it doesn't actually like create a single vert. I can't figure it out for the life of me. If you use Blender and you have like tips, hit me up. But I did get this to a place where I kind of liked where it looked. The texture obviously still needs like some normal maps and height maps and all of that, but for where I started and where I ended, I'm really happy with the final kind of texture and appearance of the trunk. And I'm excited to get started on some different leaf textures and then bringing all of this into Unreal and learning how to get Unreal. I want to have it randomly pick from like basically a sprite sheet for the leaves I want to make multiple different versions of the leaves that all go onto the same UV map, and then have the texture randomly pick which leaf texture so that every tree is different and every leaf bundle is different. So that is the next big jump on the tree models, and all of this is stuff that like I'm going to be able to reuse multiple times. I'm going to probably make different if this is the texture I end up using, I'll probably end up making some different variations of it with varying degrees of height maps, and also like slightly changing the color, or having it procedurally like have the color get lighter the top as it gets to the top of the tree and darker at the bottom, things like that. I think it was a behind the scenes video on my Patreon where I was talking about, or it might have been the podcast, but it was on my Patreon. I was talking about how I want to learn vertex painting so that I can create a moss texture for these trees and then go in within Unreal and have it paint on each tree randomly so that the moss growing on the trees is different on every single one that's spawned, so that when you're walking through my forest environment, it genuinely feels different and not like a copy and paste of the trees. But this has been a really big learning curve, and I'm really excited with the progress that I've been making. It's been slow going. I want to go faster, but it really just comes down to time management for myself. But for where this started, I'm really, really happy with it. I was having a hard time getting Blender to also scale the texture so that I could adjust what it looked like. I know how to do this in Unreal, so I'm not super worried about it because I was mostly throwing it on the model within Blender just to kind of get a feel for what it's looking like without having to open up another software. So I'm super excited. I really like how this texture is going, and I'm excited to bring it into Substance Designer to start building out normal maps and depth maps from it. That's going to be a whole new ball game and a whole new level of education for me that I'm super excited about, and hoping that will be coming in the following devlogs. And my goal is to post again in 2 weeks. So I will be back in 2 weeks with another lumber devlog update for you. If If you want to help support Lumber and follow along on the journey, the first thing you can do is make sure that you subscribe. But then also, if you want to financially help support the game, I have a mail club called the Jackrabbit Post. It's available on my website or through Patreon, and if you join through Patreon, you also get extra videos, podcasts, and more behind-the-scenes content on Lumber. And every month you get a 5x7 art print, 2 stickers, a letter from me, custom vellum paper, a habit tracker, and a custom paper print activity. The Jackrabbit Post was made for 2 reasons. One, to help fund the software and the assets and just the time it takes to make a video game, as well as to remind myself to take a break from the computer and go and do something away from screens, which is why that there's a paper activity and a habit tracker. The habits that I'm trying to build in 2026 are daily reading, daily doodles, and going to the gym more often. And I'd like to also work in consistently doing coding classes, but we'll see where I go.